Says live.
Oh, we're live. Yay.
Okay.
Awesome. It's so funny how the guests always can tell when we're live before I can. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us again for another episode of Breaking Protocol, specifically Women in Healthcare, Breaking Protocol. And I am joined today by our guest, Kate Bartley, physical therapist, certified health and life coach, one of my coming to be a dear friend. We have spent lots of time together here lately. And so we had a great conversation not too long ago about how what we do can potentially affect our health if we are not pouring into ourselves first. And I got a chance to hear a bit of her story and how it affected her, and then also going on to being on the other side of the healthcare spectrum as a patient. And so I thought, what a great opportunity for us to get together and talk about some or all of that, and really how if we really don't wake up and pay attention to our health and fitness and our wellness, how it will affect us in the future. And so Kate is an amazing health and life coach, and she runs a practice called She Walks in Wellness. So welcome, Kate. Thank you for
Thank
joining us
you.
today.
Thanks for having me. I can talk
Of
about this stuff all
course.
day. So.
So I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got from practicing as a physical therapist, and also the change from how you practiced before into pediatrics and then now into coaching.
Okay, so how I got there? Yeah, so I have always, ever since I had my first child, I kind of pulled back part-time, and I've always dived into other things. And so I've done ministry at the same time as I was practicing as a PT. I've always seen my role in PT as more of a coach role, I guess. That's what I loved about it the most, was just coming alongside and encouraging people and helping them to step into their full potential. I've always loved working with, I guess, the type of clients that were more mildly impaired. Like in the pediatric realm, it was the kids with mild CP, that were fully cognitive, where a lot of other PTs might have dismissed them, saying they didn't need therapy anymore. I was going to work with them and push them until they were, able to play baseball or whatever they were wanting to do. And so my heart always went in that direction. In the clinic, I always saw kind of deeper than the physical stuff. And so was always, I don't know, I guess I just brought in my ministry role, my coach role, everything kind of into the clinic. And so how did I shift? I guess I got to a place where something was just missing in the clinic. I had always worked part-time, but I went back when I put my kids back in private school. I stepped into, I think that I got to almost 30 hours a week there the last couple of years that I was working. And I loved my work as a PT, just like many of us do. There's not a whole lot to complain about when you're helping people. It's a pretty rewarding thing. But I was getting myself into a place where I was coming home completely depleted at the end of the day, nothing left for my family, just spent, exhausted. And then, the health challenges were coming. I just didn't have time for my own self-care. I wasn't, I used to love getting up in the morning and having time in my Bible, or just, quiet time, being able to take those walks. And there was no time for that. There was no time to process my emotions. There was, and then there was always something that I felt like was missing. Like I always wanted to go deeper with people than just treating the physical symptoms. And so there was, you're on this time block. You've got to get on to the next person. And that there's a conversation that needs to be had, but you can't have it because you can't build insurance for that. And so there was always just something missing that I wanted to do I just didn't feel like I was addressing the real root of the problem. And so trying to figure out, what does that look like? I kind of had, that's kind of why I think I pulled back from PT and was diving into ministry as well at the same time, because my heart wanted to do that. And I ended up in a place where I really started to get burned out, is when I was trying to do both of them at the same time. because I was trying to explore the one, and
Right.
it just was just too much. And so I had to start taking steps back. And then I guess that just, through my own health crisis, I had to re-examine a lot of stuff and just started seeing how my heart had always wanted to just be a coach, and how I could begin to open up the possibility of what that looked like from a different, I guess, a healthier place. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that I think is interesting about this idea, because there are a lot of people, and I wonder, and I'd love to explore this with you, the idea of, do we go into healthcare because we wanted to help people and maybe coaching wasn't a thing 20, 30 years ago? Or like, do you feel like a person they're born a coach? Or like, talk to me about that.
That's a good question. So I will say that back when I was in high school, I was a gymnastics coach. And so and I remember looking over the list of things I could do in college and what I wanted to concentrate on, and going, well, gosh, dang it, I have to do something. I'm smart. I've been raised to be independent, and I knew I needed to go to college, or wanted to go to college. So it didn't seem like a option to just choose to be a coach, right? Like, that's not using my intelligence. And so I just kind of went down the list until I landed on physical therapy, and I'm like, oh, I could do that, And so it's interesting that I feel like I've come full circle. Like, I can be a coach, and it doesn't have to be in a sport, it can be done in a different way. And so, yeah, I grew up, spotting my 5-year-old neighbor on teaching her how to do back handspring, and just, always coming alongside and trying to encourage people to learn a new skill. And so, yeah, but it's the question, what'd you say? Are we born like that? I've been studying personalities a lot, and some of it I think we're born with, because as a pediatric therapist, I can see babies and I can see the difference in their personalities as a 2-month-old, right? But yet there's a lot of research that, says that our personalities are developed as a coping strategy during childhood, that in the way that we start gaining approval, or what's working for us to gain love and safety and belonging, we start developing a personality around that. And so as a child, if you were praised for helping, right? If helping made you feel loved, and validated you, then you keep doing it. Just like if somebody's praised for doing good work, right? Like if you're making straight A's and you're praised for it, you're going to keep pushing to be a achiever, right? And so there's a point. So I think our personalities are developed around those coping strategies to ensure that love is and belonging are intact. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's
Yeah.
fascinating, because when you're talking about being a gymnastics coach, I was a volleyball coach. And then after our PT school, I came back and was a cheerleading coach, the strength and conditioning coach, of course. But it's interesting to see, like you said, that full circle. Well, like, okay, well, I can't be a coach here, so let me go do this thing over here that's more acceptable, seemingly.
Yeah.
And then we find ourselves right back where we started anyway, right?
Yeah.
So you mentioned before that you felt like that you were meant to do something more. You enjoyed the quiet time, but as your hours in the clinic started to ramp up, you didn't have time to process the emotions and things like that, and it seems like it took a toll on your health. Do you want to share a bit about what that looked like, and then also being a healthcare professional, then going on the patient side of things?
Yeah. So let me start with your first question. So yeah, I think I have always been somebody that needs to process my emotions. I was listening to the interview you did with, I can't remember her name. Again,
Latoya.
You told me Latoya, talking about an empath, and how it's easy for us to feel everything that everybody else is feeling. But it's been a very important part of my health to step in and do the inner work to process what I'm going through, to really have that self-awareness. And so when I started losing the ability to have time to do that, stuff starts coming up, right? Like you're not in a healthy place anymore. You're starting to harbor bitterness and, a lot of stuff that you're not dealing with. And so I guess this was before 2011, I was serving as a children's director at a church plant and working part-time at the same time. So really a full-time job. I wasn't getting paid for the church ministry position. But I was, I was passionate about both things I was doing. I was pouring myself into it, but again, not enough space for myself. I was in 7 years of that church ministry. I was in the service with other people probably 5 times in 7 years. And so I was not getting myself nourished. I pulled back out of the things that were nourishing me to be nourishing other people and meeting their needs. So my personality in the clinic, even though I stepped back from the clinic, I was still being the same person outside of the clinic. So burnout doesn't have to be in the clinic, right? And we take who we are wherever we go. So that's why we gotta recognize what we're doing. But I wasn't spending the time doing that inner work and writing and processing through my feelings to be able to be in an emotionally healthy place. And so I found myself crying myself to sleep on Saturday nights, not wanting to get up and go to church on Sunday mornings to serve because I just was exhausted. I didn't have a support network around me. I was doing it all and carrying it on my shoulders alone. And it just wasn't a very healthy environment for me at all. And I knew it, and I felt like I was asking for help, but now looking back, I don't think I really was. I think I was just...
Wait, I got to slow you down right there because you're talking about it on the ministry side, but I think a lot of people feel like their work as a healthcare professional, provider, or caregiver is a ministry in and of itself. Yes. And so it's so interesting because in the work I do with clinicians and burnout, I see the same thing. They're talking about crying themselves to sleep. They're talking about not wanting to go into the thing that they really do love. And so how did you take a step back, one, and be brave enough to ask for help? Maybe what did that look like? And then also, if you could dive in a little bit deeper in terms of what does processing your thoughts and feelings look like for someone who's saying, okay, I hear what she's saying. I can identify with that. I might need to do that, but I have no idea what that looks like or where to start.
Yeah. So number one, you're not going to like my answer as to how I took a step back. And this is why I'm passionate about getting this message out there, is I took a step back when my body forced me to. When I ended up with sitting in the doctor's office, or actually I was walking down the hall, walking a patient, and you got the call on the intercom, Kate, you've got a call on line 2. And it was the nurse at the ENT's office telling me my lab results that I had papillary thyroid cancer. And that is what caused me to take a step back. And it ended up being the greatest blessing in my life because I finally got to a place where I couldn't help anybody else. I had to take care of myself. I was put into several days of isolation after taking a radioactive iodine pill, and got to just be like, you know what? I'm not going to show up for what I can do for anybody. I'm just here. This is where I am. This is my calling right now, is just to be right here. And so it was such a, and through that process, I started a blog and started writing. And when I started writing, I started healing. And so that leads back to the whole emotional health side of it, is that I learned firsthand that neglecting my emotional health, neglecting to express myself and say what I needed and give myself permission to step back and do what I needed to do for myself, led me to a place of physical ill health. And then from that place, I found healing for my body through expression and through writing and through dealing with the emotions. And so I'm a firm believer that healing is an inside job, and that we have to give ourselves time to do it. And so your second, do you want me to answer the second question? How do we do it? Well, it starts by being honest. I think it starts by getting honest. And when you're in that place when you're crying and you don't want to go, that's kind of a signal that something's out of whack, right? Something is out of alignment. And we can keep blaming everybody else. We can blame our job. We can blame the healthcare system. We can blame our husbands for not recognizing we're struggling. We can blame God. We can blame the church. Or we can take personal responsibility, and we can go, wait a minute, am I really going in and having the conversation? Am I saying what I need? Am I giving myself permission to create more space for myself? Or am I just carrying this weight of, well, I've got to have this, I've got to take care of the finances, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. And yeah, I mean, it's time. You just have to get to a place where your life is important. You know, if you think that the health of your patient is important, you got to get to a place where you think your own health is important.
Oh man, you said a word. You said a word right there, because it is very challenging for many people. This thought of, and you said there, I have to. And one of the things that I'm always challenging people on is that sense or that belief or that thought that they have to. You don't have to do anything, right? So that's the first thing. There may be some consequences to not doing the thing, but you don't actually have to. And I think some of the emotional healing that comes from all of this is understanding that we can step back and that we are empowered in that we get to do this work, right?
Exactly.
So we don't actually have to, we get to. And I think for a lot of people that does calm down things a bit, and they get their power back and they get a little bit more of a sense of control there. So you then find yourself in isolation, and you just get this time where you're forced actually to just be, right? And just be by yourself, be with your emotions, and you start writing, which helps with the emotional processing. So what was it like to be on the other side, you know, wearing the patient gown and being
not good. Not good. That's like, talk about an identity crisis. You know, like to be sitting in that place as a patient, or to even have that health questionnaire where you're having to actually start adding stuff to it when it's always been blank before, right? Like, you know, I'm the person that's healthy. I'm the person that's the caregiver. I'm not the patient that's filling out and writing down all the issues I'm having. And so it just creates this, I don't know, what do we call it? Cognitive dissonance. It's like something like, this isn't me. Like, what's going on here? And it's very disempowering to be in that place. You all of a sudden feel like you have to follow somebody else's advice on what to do and the decision that you have to make. And it's kind of lonely because you don't know how to tell everybody else that you need help. You don't know how to ask for help. And so, like, I would never have my husband come with me to the appointments because he was used to seeing me as this independent, strong woman, and I would act like I could go do it by myself. And then afterwards I'd be like, why didn't I tell him to come with me? Like, it's a very, I don't even know how to explain it other than it just feels like you don't belong there. Right. And so, but I think what I would love for people to understand is, don't wait to get to that place where you're in a place of disempowerment, where somebody tells you you need to have this procedure, or you've got to take this $5,000 pill and risk having, you know, entering another toxicity in your body that can create another kind of cancer. And you have to make those choices at that point. You know, what if we took a proactive approach and we took, you know, empowerment for our health on the front end, right? Where we say, wait a minute, I'm not going to wait till somebody tells me I have to have this test and I don't feel like I have a choice in the matter. You know, we do have a choice, and we have it right now to start walking in more wellness, you know, to start taking care of ourselves so that we don't end up on the other side. I don't know.
So what would be some of the like early warning signals from your point of view, if you were to look back and say, I should have paid attention to that?
Tears, frustration, you know, that emotional stuff, that piece where you feel out of alignment, when your soul doesn't feel in alignment, when you feel like you have a longing for something else and you're not listening to it. Your body will start speaking up when you don't speak up for yourself. And what I'm learning about the power of our mind is, and I know you agree with this as well to an extent, is that our thoughts literally can create disease in our body. Our thoughts lay down physical structures in our body, and they can turn on and off genes for disease. And so anytime we're entertaining a negative thought, or we're staying in this place of funk for too long, you know, it releases cortisol in our body, and it interferes with the hormonal balance of our body, and it can lead us to a place of ill health. And so I just think it's really important to start recognizing when paying attention to those feelings, tracing them back to our thoughts, like you teach, Tavana, and to really do the work to set aside intentional time each day to be getting that stuff out. And then, looking at, wait a minute, I don't think you just shift the thought. I think you got to process through the stuff. I think you got to write it down. Somebody that reads the Bible, if you guys, Job in the Bible, he starts off and he's telling it like it is, and he's a mess, and he's bitter, and he's angry, and he's just getting it out there. But then as he processes it, then he starts shifting, and he starts seeing truth, and he starts, shifting his perspective. And then he ends up in a place of thinking on what's good and what's true and what's right. And I think we just have to allow ourselves and give ourselves time to do that. Otherwise we
like processing to peace is
yes, pain to peace. Exactly. From pain to peace.
Yeah. And so for anybody that's watching or listening, a practical way that you can start to do that, it's beautiful that you gave that example, is I ask people to, when they're feeling themselves in this negative spiral or in the funk, at the end of the day, just something as simple as this little notebook, just a small, it doesn't have to be fancy, it doesn't have to be beautiful, but just something to do a thought download, to get all of the thoughts out of your brain so that you can see them and process them and challenge them, right?
Yes.
So it's out of there, it's not just spinning around and taking you down this negative spiral. And sometimes all your brain needs to do is be heard. And then once you've done that, then you make the clearing for, okay, I see what the actual problems are here, the things that I can do something about, things I can't, and we're going to move on from there. And then you can start to make some of those changes and perspectives like Kate was talking about, but you have to process first.
And I love what you said about
simple, easy way. Yep.
I love what you said about being heard, because so many times we're waiting for somebody else to hear us. Well, what if we just start nourishing ourselves and hearing ourselves, What if we start giving ourselves what we need? And then from that place, then we're whole and able to give to other people, not from a place of need, like I need to help you in order to feel good about myself, but from a place of I've already met my needs, and now I can serve you from this place of overflow. So, yeah.
Oh, that's deep. I like that. So tell me a little bit then about how you work with who is your favorite person to work with, and how do you support them?
I guess we always say that we like to work with people that are similar to us because we understand them. Right now I'm working with a lot of women that are navigating midlife like I did, that are helper personalities, whether they're in the helping profession or I've got teachers, I've got a special needs mom, I've got a couple people in the medical professional, just a lot of that same personality mindset of I'm going to put everybody else first. And so I love to, most of the time they're coming in the door from, I'm of burnout, or I just can't, my body's not keeping up with this anymore, and I'm just ready for change. But I love just helping them shift perspective, to begin to just make it simple, where we just start taking little steps of simplifying their lives, letting go of the things that aren't serving them and energizing them anymore, giving themselves permission to say yes to themselves, and
no to others.
And
right?
no to others. Yeah. I mean, I have a client today that just texted me yesterday that was about to commit to something else again. And she's like, I'm about to say yes again. And I'm like, so just, I don't tell her what to do, but I remind her what her goals are, reminding her what she's wanting. She's wanting to be in a place of peace and less scattered and more present and available. And so that looks like more no's and less yet, so that we can say yes to the things that really energize us, so that we can focus our energy in one direction. And that's just preaching right back at me every time, so. So there's such, go ahead, what were you gonna say?
Well, you mentioned about working with helpers, and I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how you help people reframe their identity as a helper.
Yeah. And so that's another thing I did with one of them last week was we delved deep into her personality, and we used anything from studying the personality through the Enneagram. I used the personality 16 assessment, the ready, anything like that, where they really start to see, okay, wait a minute, what I'm feeling is a lot of other people feel this too. And this is why I'm feeling this. Like the helper personality is somebody that has learned to, when we show up in a room, we're showing up to serve. We see and feel what everybody else is feeling. And we feel like, oh gosh, like I used to sit in a room, and if my son was disengaged with the movie that we'd picked for the family, I'm seeing what he's feeling and worrying that he's not enjoying the experience. And so just knowing that we have a tendency to do that, it keeps us from being present, because we're constantly focused on how we can show up to help somebody else. And we've got to understand that about ourselves if we're going to change our habits. And so a lot of it is just, reframing that I'm not loved for what I do for someone else. I'm just loved for who I am. I don't have to show up to serve. They don't need me to serve them. I can just be in the room with them, and that's enough. And so learning how to, a lot of it is just digging into our self-worth and knowing, what our identity lies in.
Since you're so into the personalities, it made me think of what you were saying in terms of not only the helping and the serving, but the achiever. I see a lot of that in the achiever, right? They get their worth from doing the most, being the best, being successful. And I'm sure some reframing has to occur around that. So we've identified helper, we've identified an achiever. Are there some other personality types in your work that you found that need a bit of reframing so that the people can give back to themselves?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of the other one. One of my clients is more of a very practical and observer, very gathering data and analyzing and that type of personality. And she's actually a special needs mom. And so one of the things we've been working on with her was learning how to stop gathering so much of what's going on out there. She doesn't even feel her own emotions because she's disconnected. And so, you've got to take a step back and start to notice what's going on in here and giving yourself permission to pay attention to that. And so, there's a lot of different tools that we use, but, a lot of it is, recognizing what we want to experience, what's getting in the way, and a lot of visualization about, using our brain training to visualize the difference, like mental rehearsal kind of stuff. I had somebody do a video last time where used I am statements, and they had a video of themselves saying their I am statements. I am a person of peace. I am confident. I am focused. I am, we do a lot of like writing a letter to yourself from your future self, of that self that's at peace, that's, and then recording a video of it. And so that you can replay it and remind yourself, this is why I'm making a choice to say no to this so that I can say yes to this. That it's such an empowering place to not be waiting for somebody else to tell you what to do, but to tell yourself what to do,
Oh my goodness. If you can you just say that, just walk by me and say that all the time, because it's the same thing when people, we talked, and we need to get back to this too, you making the transition from a physical therapist and that identity crisis moving over to a coach, right? Because so many of us, especially, and that's part of the reason why we came up with breaking protocol, right? Is so many of us, especially in the healthcare profession, are used to following protocol and waiting for someone else to tell them what to do versus connecting to their own wisdom, like you were mentioning with your client, that she wants to go out there and get all of the information out there versus tapping into her own wisdom. So tell me about making the transition from physical therapist and that being your identity back to coach and working in this way. What was that like for you?
I'm not going to say that it was an easy transition. That identity stuff is deep. And so, there's a lot of push and pull going on through that journey, but you just have to keep taking steps forward. And so it's very free on this side. Now I will say, as I'm trying to, choose a niche and really stay focused, that stuff keeps coming up. Those shoulds come up, but gosh, it would be so easy for me to create a business, focusing on a specific type of client that I've worked with for so many years. I could do that like that. But wait a minute, if I'm doing this to listen to my heart and to drop into my heart and really do what I long to do, why would I go back to that path again? And so I have to keep doing that work, or I'll pull myself right back into the same place I was, in the same pattern. But how am I answering your question?
I think you are. It's just interesting to see. Like, one of the things that I've noticed as we've started this journey and talking to other women who have taken a leap like yourself is that it's not easy, that you have to keep doing the internal work, that you have to be courageous enough to keep taking steps forward. And then also, like you said, tapping into your own wisdom as you navigate through. So,
and I think, bringing accountability alongside ourselves. I'm sure you have a coach. I have a coach. I've got to have somebody that's holding my vision. I've got to share my vision with them. This is what I want. I want to help the helper that is afraid to ask for help, but is crying themselves to sleep at night. I could go out there and there's all kind of people raising their hands for help, but if I can help get them unstuck and empower them to give themselves permission to walk in a place of wellness, a place of freedom, a place of balance, then imagine what their life can do, and that's just something I can't pull myself away to go do some easier thing that my heart is not going to be aligned with. And so it's a place where I have to get past my fear of rejection and vulnerability and all that stuff, because I got to keep showing up and saying, hey, I know you're not raising your hand, but I see you. I was you. And you don't have to live like this, And so, yeah. I don't know what your question was. I don't know where I went with that, but
it was. I've forgotten the question myself, but it was spot on. Like, everything happens as it should. Yeah. So if you had some last words, so we talked about writing letters from our future self. So if you could go back a moment and you had something that you would share with your former self from where you are now that you might be able to impart to our listeners, what might that be? As we
wait, who's talking to me now? My former self or my future?
You're talking to yourself.
Talking to
maybe
my former self.
5 or 10 years ago.
Oh wow. I think, gosh, I actually just did a transformational call this week that I did that future pacing exercise with, and I was like, oh my gosh, Kate, what are you waiting for? You have a message to share. What, get up and speak it. Say it, like, what are you afraid of? And I just, I went from one place years ago. I was standing in front of women teaching and speaking, but I let fear of rejection and feeling like I didn't have what they needed, feeling like I wasn't helping enough, right? And I started pulling back from it. And I wasn't in a healthy place to have the support and accountability around me. And so now I feel like I've come full circle where I'm done with letting that stuff get in the way of my calling and my mission and my voice. And so what telling my former self now is, be aware of those patterns, and you got to do the work to stay present, to stay speak into that woman that's crying herself to sleep at night. Just because she doesn't say she needs help, because she may be shut down, doesn't mean that she doesn't. And it reminds me, the other thing she would tell me is to maintain your rhythms and your balance, to be careful, not to shift back to where you were before, to take care of yourself, to get up and to have your time, whether it's meditation or prayer or whatever, to go to the gym, to watch that helper personality doesn't sneak back in and try to prioritize everybody else in your business, and because I'll end up right back where I was. So, yeah.
That's so great. Thank you for sharing it. And you said something so important there, that in this I'm not helping enough actually makes you not help anyone, because you said you
Exactly.
pulled back, right? So you're not helping
Exactly.
enough, but then you end up helping no one. So let's
Exactly.
just help a little bit, right?
Yes.
And then
Exactly.
you can help more with the momentum there. So thank you so much, Kate, for being here. Tell the people where they can find you online and connect with you.
Okay, sure. You can find me at shewalksandwellness.com. I'm in the process of redesigning that, but you can find me there. Go to my About page, and it has all my contact information. I offer a complimentary discovery call to anybody that's on the call, or where we can just sit down and talk about what's not going well and what you'd like to be doing differently, and see if we can get you well. And you can follow me on Instagram. I think my Instagram account right now is Kate Bartley PT. Facebook is She Walks in Wellness. So
awesome. So much. So we are going to close now here for the recording, but we are going to pop up in the group and continue the discussion. If any of you all want to ask Kate some specific questions or comment on anything that she said, we are at the Thrive Network for Conscious Women in Healthcare.